What does CODAP do? CODAP, it's a platform. We call it a platform for doing data analysis. And so you can't really do any data analysis until you have some data. And there's lots of different ways to get CODAP, to get data into CODAP. But one of the simplest ways, if you have some data, and I have a CSV here on my desktop, is I'm just going to drag it in here. And now I've got some data on plants and plant growth. And if anyone's ever done top biology or whatever, fast plants are a big thing because they grow real fast, and you can do some nice experiments in just a few weeks. And this is a standard kind of table, right? We're all used to. And you can see we've got plant K, observer Matt, conditioned sunlight, just 6 days before it flowered. And then we can even, I'm going to move this over. I can adjust things. So then I have day 1, what the height is, whether it flowers, number of leaves. Now notice this is repeated over and over again, and we don't blink an eye at that because we've been, harangued into using spreadsheets over our whole life. But mostly people don't. If you're trying to conceptualize the data I have, you think, well, I have a plant, and this plant has been 20 measurements on this plant, day 1 to 20, and then I start again with another person. So one of the things that CODAP makes possible is hierarchical data structures. So let's say if I bring plant ID all the way over here, and now I can see that I actually have 10 plants, right? And I can click on each of these, and it will scroll the table to that data. But one of the things I notice is that this is the same, this is the same, this is the same. So actually all of those things should be at the plant level, right? Who the observer was, what the conditions were, and days to flower. So now I have something where I've got 2 levels. And in fact, if I felt like it, I could say, well, maybe I even want to be doing some analysis based on the light in the sun, like what condition it was in. So I could drag that over and make another level. So now I've got all the sun and all the shade. And so this is a way, depending on how you are conceptualizing the data, it lets you organize that. And it makes certain kinds of things possible for analysis. So for example, let's say that I wanted to do, I wanted to know what the max height was of each plant. Well, the plant level is right here. I could add a new attribute we call, and I'll call it max, max height. And now I'm going to edit the formula. And there's a really nice formula editor now. Thank you, Kirk. In which I can look at all the various functions I have and get information on all of them, or what values can I insert into this area. And I can also, if I know some of the stuff, I can just start typing. Like I want the max, there's a max function of the height. And I hit that, and now it calculates my max height for all my flowers.
When you put up the list of arguments for that function, did it know that those needed to be numerical values, and did it filter them?
It didn't filter those arguments. That's just like anything that you could use possibly as an argument.
Max color, and it would try to pick a max.
If I said max of the state boundaries, it wouldn't know what to do with that. There'd be some kind of error.
No, but that would be a numerical thing. But even if it were categorical data, it wouldn't know what to do, and it would just
right. Now, an interesting thing here is I've got max height calculated at the plant level. I could move this over to this level, and now I've got max height calculated for sun versus shade. Mm-hmm. So even the formulas are movable around like this. It's really nice to be able to think, at what level do I want to be doing my analysis? How can I design this? Now,
put that column in both places?
You could make a second over here.
So I just want to say that the paper that I mentioned that we submitted, the research paper, is based on interviews with middle school students and these data and this structure of the data. And one of the findings was, given graphs with linked selection, kids at the middle school level can make sense of this. So don't be thinking to yourself, oh, this is beyond what kids can do. No, kids can do this.
Right. So we've seen that kids can do this in previous work, like that Cliff has done in the past, where unstructured data was given to kids and said, well, can you impose some structure? They imposed a kind of structure like this. It wasn't linked subtables, but it was like, here's my card that's like the car, and then the car was on these roads, and like they would create these kinds of hierarchical structures. So it seems like this is both. Once you understand it, it feels more intuitive, right, than having a flat table that lists sun 20 times in a row, because that's, I've done that for my plant. I know it was in the sun. All right, so let's look at getting to some of these other features here. In terms of graphing, I click on a graph now, and what we have is the data is scattered over here. We haven't defined it. One of the ways that we are thinking about this is you have all these are a case. If I clicked on one of these, you could actually find which one it represents in this table here. But we just haven't shaped it, and you'll see that things animate as we do that. So, for example, if I do a let's see, which one do I want to do? Yeah, if I wanted to do a distribution of the max heights, I could see I dragged that in here, and because we were changing from a different level, you didn't see the animation in this case. But let's add something like
and maybe you could undo and do the do something that will animate.
I'm going to show an animation now in a second. So let me add because now I've defined something here. I have certain measures that I can add, and I'm going to add the mean, for example. One of the interesting things you can do with CODAP data is you can actually drag stuff around to see. Oops, let's see.
Not the stuff that's
not formulas one. Sorry, not computed ones. And then I'm going to add my light condition, and now I can compare my max heights on those two conditions. So things that are categorical will then separate into sort of subgraphs, and if you had measures on there, it will calculate for each of those.
What are the vertical lines again?
These are the mean.
Oh, that's right. You put the mean out.
I put the mean there. And
that's a very tricky concept, by the way. The mean of the maximum of a thing over a cent. I mean, non-trivial.
Non-trivial, yes.
And according to Bill, middle school kids can do that part, Bill?
We didn't research that part.
Okay.
If I get this data jam proposal we're putting in, we will research that part.
Most adults can't do that.
And so let's look at another, another more typical graph that we might make would be like a scatter plot, in which I'm going to do something like days to flower versus max height. And I see here, there's maybe some correlation between those things. And you see how the animation, like as we add and configure or apply constraints or descriptions of the cases that we're interested in, or the parts of the case, we call like this whole row would be a case at this level. And then so each of these are cases. And so right now, if I wanted to do some analysis here, I'll see I have new functions under my measures. So I can put a movable line on here, which allows me to sort of visually curve fit this if I think that it's linear. Right? Or there's also things like I can decide to have it calculate for me a least squares regression line. I could even compare what I thought was the visual appropriate fit versus what the computer calculates.
Both of those at once?
I can do both of those at once, yeah.
How close you can be.
Right, so I didn't remember where I was, but I could do that. All right, let's see. I'm going to do another graph. And this is sort of maybe a more typical graph that students would have made. I'm going to throw this one down here for now. And let's do the graph at this level. We've got day, and there's that animation that we were talking about, and height. And so here is the pattern of the growth patterns of the different plants. Now, let's say I want to know which plant is which. I could drop plant ID in the middle, and now I have a legend that colors these, and I can use the legend itself to highlight things. And I want you to notice that I can click on other parts here, like I can click on this one here if I'm interested in this particular plant. It finds it in the table, it shows me that point on this graph, and it highlights all those points in this graph. So every piece is linked together. If I want to know Lauren's data. I could click on Lauren over here, and now I see Lauren's data represented in all of these pieces. One of the things that I found the most powerful about CODAP is that I can use a graph as a way to filter other graphs for things I'm interested in. So for example, I might say, you know, I'm really interested in just these 3 really tall plants. And now I have that selected everywhere. And over here, I could say, hide the unselected ones. So now I just have the data from those tall plants. So I didn't have to write some kind of function if it's greater than such and such value or whatever. So it's really nice to be able to take, you know, I've got one graph, I use that to filter my results in other graphs. So graphs are no longer just an end, a means to an end. They are a tool to help you explore the data itself. So this, I think, is one of the most powerful things about what CODAP can do. Let's see. All right, I wanted to show some linked representations using maps, so I'm going to do a real quick thing. One of our partners that Bill mentioned was the Ocean Tracks group at EDC, and so here we have a map. Let me get rid of some of this stuff so I can make room here. So here we have a map, and this is a map of 4 different elephant seals. Notice we've got our 2 hierarchical levels, and I can highlight those and see what we have here. I can color the map with a legend. So let's say take month. So now I can see, let's see, what were they doing in July and June? Well, they looked like they were booking it out to sea here. I hit August, and now they're like spending all this time clustered in a little place over here. And I might say, well, what's going on there? I wonder what other factors might be involved. I don't know what they are, but let's try. I see depth as one of my things. So this is the max depth that they measured on that day. So I'm going to drop that over here. And I can now see there's an interesting pattern with depth. They seem to spend at 2 different depths. I might have a hypothesis that, well, I think maybe where they're spending time out there, they're like shallow. I don't know. So I'm going to look at the more shallow depths. Well, that seems spread all over the place over here. So that doesn't look right. And another way I might look at it is I might say, well, let me highlight that area that I saw them all clustered in. Do I see patterns over here? No. So it doesn't seem like depth is related. So this idea of linking maps, tables, graphs, the multiple link representations, using one to sort of filter and look at others, I think is a really powerful thing that CODAP can do.